Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, creative thinkers, and welcome back to the Rebel, Reject, Create podcast. And today, my guest is Liora Kern, who's a communication strategist, brand builder, coach, and founder of The Think Room. And they are helping professionals and organizations stay visible, credible, and human in the AI age. Welcome, Liora.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Glad to be here. Sorry.
Great. I wanted to pick up on this idea of humanness in the AI age because there was also a Think Room article that you shared on LinkedIn, which was talking about this contrast. Why is it so important to be making this distinction now between human creativity and AI? And how do you see that working?
Yeah, it's so interesting how many people think it's either you're against AI or you're in favor of it. I love AI. I'm experimenting day and night. I'm so fascinated with this age. I was also one of the first people to dive into the digital world, experiment with websites and social media. So I love it. At the same time, of course, I don't want to just read what Sean Hayes, who you had on your show, calls a tsunami of sameness. I don't want to read just, posts that all sound like they've been written by the same bots. So what we do at the Think Room and what I find super important is that we still define first what makes a person unique and go into that whole personal and professional DNA of a person. And then we use AI tools to scale. And so that's what we do. And that's super fascinating because we get to know individuals and organizations. We dive deep into what people do, what makes them unique. And then we see how best to use these super fascinating tools to make their lives easier. Yeah. So that's basically what we do.
Okay. So you said something there that I think disguises quite a complex process. It says you collect all this information from people and then you see what makes them unique. How exactly do you do that?
Yeah, it's so when we do it for organizations, what we do is we speak to as many people within the organizations as possible, and ideally also of the target audience. So because the information lives in the organization, but often they don't know anymore what it is. So it's within the founder, but then it has developed, and there is this organizational identity, but they have lost touch with it. So they know what they do. They probably know how they do it, but Simon Sinek's why, the whole system, they don't know anymore. They just do a whole bunch of things and they've moved on. They're focused on lots of different things, but not anymore about really who they are. And so that's very interesting. If you do a lot of interviews, then you can bring that out. Now, this was all this was always very important. I mean, I believe every person is unique, right? Like you
Yeah.
are unique. Even if you do the exact same thing as somebody else, you
Mm,
are different. And so the same thing goes for organizations, but often they don't know anymore and they go so deep in
right.
competing with other organizations that they become really similar in their behavior, in their actions, in their communication, especially, and that became so apparent to us with AI. We
Yeah.
just doubled down on the sameness rather than the uniqueness. And then we said, okay, now we need to really double down on, okay, guys, if you want to use AI, great, but let's first take a step back and say, let's define what hill you want to die on, what words you hate. It's simple things and very complex things. And you said, how do you do that? It's once you have all that information, you bring them all together and you say, okay, this is what we've heard. And for associations, for example, associations, we work a lot with European associations because we're based here in Brussels. And because they're all different and they all have different viewpoints, they often have communication that's very bland because that's the only thing they can agree on. But then if it's so
Mm,
bland and you're not fighting for anything specific because you can't really agree on anything, you may as well not exist.
right.
But then
Nobody
they're
cares.
always Nobody cares. And then you may as well. So, but there are always a few things that they can all agree on. And then they should be very vocal and very almost aggressive about, or at least very vocal about. And
Mm,
so So, once you give them all a voice, once you interview them all, and once you bring that out and you say, okay, well, let's now all agree. Now we're all here in the same room, and now we've interviewed you all individually. Let's now agree that this is what we're going to fight for. We're going to leave all the other points that we used to communicate about let's leave that. This is your DNA. This is your purpose. This is why we're here. And then let's create a really strong campaign, and then they're like, yeah. And because were brought into this, not invented here syndrome is not there, then they're also willing to put some money on the table and say, okay, yeah, let's campaign for this. Let's make it very strong, very vocal, and then it becomes meaningful again. Part of my work.
Interesting. So, if I can translate some of what you're saying there into just slightly different terms, it's if what AI is doing, and a lot of actually online services, anything to do with data, is aggregating, you're differentiating, you're distilling to less to emphasize differences.
Okay, so yeah, so that's the next step. So this is still all the old way. This we used to this we've done for centuries. This we've done for decades. Yeah,
Yeah.
not for centuries. I'm not that old either. So it's starting to feel like that. But once you have all this information, we create a really long and comprehensive document, one document, because often this information lives in the organization. You have a mission here and a vision there, and you have guidelines there. But no, you put it all in one comprehensive document with everything in it, the points of view, words you hate, words you like, and things you want to be associated with. But also, you analyze all the emails, what works, what doesn't work, what is the click, what is the point of action, the call to action that works, like you put everything in one document.
Yeah.
It's usually 100 pages long. Then, yeah, I mean, once you start aggregating everything, and then you have this briefing document. Now, why is this amazing? Well, for lots of different reasons. There's a new team member, and they can read it. Like, what is this organization about? What do they stand for? How do they want to sound? What is their mission? What's their vision? What are their key, messages? Like, everything is in one place. They don't have to go looking for it. Have you ever, joined an organization and you wanted to know something, find out something? Like, oh yeah, our brand guidelines. Can you ask Tracy? I think she knows where to. No, it's difficult to find anything. It's all in one place. And at the same time, and now I get to your question, if you want to brief an AI tool, if you have a document like that, all of a sudden, what will come, and you can give it that type of document, the output will sound like the organization or like the individual, because we do individual DNA keys as well. So you have this document and you say, look, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Copilot, here is my reference document, my DNA key. Here is everything you know about me, including examples of the perfect LinkedIn post, the perfect email, we put all of that in it. That's why the document's so long. Now I'd like to create a LinkedIn post on subject X. Please take into consideration all the information we put in this document and create it for us. And we test this to make sure it works.
Right.
So that makes content creation so easy. So it's all the sort of old-fashioned stuff that's still very important and works. And then the modern sort of making things easy stuff, which frees us up for the strategic work, the creative work, which still has, of course, a role to play, a very important role to play.
Right. You've used the word why and purpose a couple of times already. Um, sorry to use the same words. Why, in this kind of process, is that so important?
Because if you don't know why you're different, what your purpose is, everything becomes mediocre. You
Wow.
don't stand out. You don't have a reason of, even of your organization. If you cannot explain, and it's very funny because people pitch at me all the time. I work with, quite senior professionals who want to be coached. And the first thing I ask them is pitch your product, pitch your organization at me.
Yeah.
And last week someone asked me, do you want the long or the short version? I said, short, please. And 10 minutes later,
Oh,
they finished. And I said, this was the short version. He said, yes. I said, well, it was not short, first of all. And second of all, I have no idea what you just said. I didn't understand a word of it. And he said, really? I said, yeah, really. As like a short version is two sentences
Yeah,
that tell me this is what I do, this is for whom I do it, this is how it helps somebody else, the purpose. Like, and
yeah,
this is, and then if after these two sentences I'm interested, I want to say, tell me more. But you're not gonna, do some monologue on me. If you cannot tell me in two sentences why it matters, why should anyone be interested,
yeah.
right?
Again, why do we care?
Why should I care?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's incredible how nobody knows how to pitch themselves, how to create interest.
yeah.
So the funny thing is that yes, there's an 80-page document, but at the same time, I'm teaching people to pitch in three
Right.
sentences.
Yeah,
Both these things are true at the same time.
yeah. Is there then some kind of a link between purpose, understanding your why, and being creative enough to stand out in a busy crowd?
Absolutely.
As can you explain?
Yeah, I mean, but the funny thing is that people who are very good at doing all sorts of interesting things often find it very difficult to tell people interesting stories about themselves.
Yeah,
There's something really interesting about that. So they can do, sometimes they have consultancies or they're one person businesses and they do really interesting stuff, but then they're quiet when it comes to themselves. They are hesitant to get on a podium, to speak in a panel, to write LinkedIn posts. They're a bit shy, insecure maybe. Not because they're not creative, but because of insecurities. I don't know. And yeah, and I hope that with a tool like this, and also with some coaching, they can get to that point where they can get their creativity to apply to themselves too.
so identifying your purpose almost gives you it's almost not like speaking about yourself anymore. So it's easier to be clear about
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it gives you a framework because
Right.
I hear very often people tell me, "Oh, it feels so vain. It feels so
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about myself." And I say, "You don't need to talk about yourself. You talk about what matters to you. You talk about what inspires you. You talk about what gives you energy. Talk about you find things fascinating. Everybody keeps asking you the same question. I'm sure you get a question. I don't know what it is, but there are things that people always ask you, right? There are
yeah,
people that they're just I get the same question over and over again. It's usually about visibility. My people always ask me questions about visibility. So that's kind of your thing, right? So share that knowledge with the world. You're doing it, right? In your
yeah,
podcast. But
yeah.
not everybody's like that.
No,
And to me, I find it fascinating to go into people's soul and to bring it out and to make them feel confident enough to bring it to the world.
that's such an interesting point because I didn't start this podcast, until I got quite clear on why I was doing what I was doing. Because actually, exactly what you said. Up until then, I felt like, well, it's just me, blah, blah, blah. But now I'm like, no, well, actually, I feel this is a way I can contribute to making the world a better place. I believe creativity is so important that more people should understand how it works and how they actually are creative so they can do it more so that we can have a better world. And once I sort of had that, it was like, okay, podcast is fine. I can do it. Okay.
Yeah. But
Wow.
it's funny how you needed that justification to do something super interesting.
Yeah. Wow. So, wow. So, instead of going boom, bigger, wider, more detail, more data, we first need to go all the way down to one little point. Like, why are we in business? Why are we doing this thing? And then
What
out.
makes us, yeah, what makes us unique? And I think once you know what really drives me, what makes me different, because often we chase something, but it's not really for us. So it's really important to also do it early on in our lives because we do something because it's expected from us, or because somebody else told, or because we originally thought that that was what success looked like.
Mm,
Even though if you chase somebody else's dream, you're never going to be successful at it,
no,
right?
no, no. Okay, so as a communicator, functionally, how does this work? This purpose-led, really clear about how this helps way of talking about stuff. Why is that so effective?
Because everybody wants to hear something that's authentic.
Right.
We're craving it so much. It's also so interesting because we can spot AI created content. Like it's so easy for us,
Yeah.
right? We know it's so funny. It's a hobby now for all of us, right? That people say, I like all these posts that say that this post was not written by AI when it was in fact written by AI. I love those posts. When I think it's okay if you want to use AI to help you write a post. You may not be a native speaker or like,
Right.
so it's fine. But if you specifically write that you didn't use AI when you actually used AI, that's something wrong with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's a lie. I don't like lies. So, but if you are authentic and you write from the heart and you want to share something that's meaningful to you, that write or share in a podcast form, or you make music. My sister's a musician. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
That touches us. And I think now I really hope that AI can become something that gives us the space
Hmm.
instead of just making us all unemployed. It gives us space to go out in nature, make music, do art,
Yeah.
read more. That would be
Yeah.
beautiful.
That would be beautiful. And if there was one thing that you could change in the world that would help make that possible, what would that be and why?
I really think that I'm surprised with how much insecurity there still is. I speak to people, and I always thought that it was mostly women because
Mhm.
I coach a lot of women
Yeah.
that feel very insecure, but I get more and more men who feel the same way.
Yep.
So yeah, who just like you just said, like who wants to hear from me? Like they need justification to start speaking out. So so I don't know. I think we really need to. I don't know. I'm trying to change it myself. I don't really know how to change it in a bigger way,
Yeah.
that we can. I don't know. Do you have suggestions? How can we
Well,
bring this to the world that if you can focus on your own purpose, that's a beautiful thing that will make things easier. I don't know how to do this in a larger way.
I mean, I
Um,
love that you've identified it because I think that's exactly it. Most people, it's too dangerous to do that socially, at work, politically, and what have you. So a lot of us don't. And I think how we change that, yeah, I think the biggest thing that needs to change is we need to be less judgmental. We need to be less convinced that there's one right answer out there and that
yeah,
everything else is wrong.
yeah,
And more comfortable with the idea that, well, there could be a whole bunch of answers. Let's go and explore.
yeah. That I 100% agree with.
Yeah. But how do you get
Very
there?
polarized. Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how to get there though.
yeah.
I was kind of hoping you'd have an idea.
No, I mean, I think as you age, you become a little bit less, I mean, not everyone, clearly, but you become a little less polarized, I think, hopefully, most of us.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I feel that way. But typically, that's not what people say. They say all people get stuck in their ways and they become very rigid and what have you. I wonder if that is less true now from sort of Generation X onwards, moving ahead. That would be pretty cool if we could all become less judgmental as we got older.
I mean, when I was younger, I had very strong
Ooh,
convictions and
me
I
too.
felt like I knew what was what. And whereas now I feel like there's very little I know. Like the more you know, the more you know you don't know, right?
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All
And
right,
I'm
Liora.
just getting more and more curious about other people, which is why and that's why I do what I do because I'm so interested in everybody. And I really love this aspect of what I do, like, and getting people to realize where their true interests lie. It's magical. It's fantastic.
That's a brilliant place to stop this conversation, I think.
Yeah.
Liora, thank you so much. That's a lovely insight. And I think the big takeaway from today's conversation with Liora is, well, let's make more space where we don't have to be so insecure about our creativity so that we can actually all enjoy the benefits of it. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the show. You can find Leora's website and all of her socials and what have you in the show notes underneath. So go out and check out what she's busy doing over there in Brussels. And to you, Leora, thank you so much. It's been a lovely conversation.
Thank you for having me.